Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Switzerland is preparing for nuclear war. We have shortage of baby formula in the United States. Only 43% of what is normally available is available. Collapse of the markets, complete massacre of the crypto markets, especially with the Luna crash. We're going to go ahead and explain what that is. And the food riots have begun. So let's put on our conspiracy theory hats and let's get started. $35 trillion is the value of the global market that has been lost since the beginning of the year. Just to kind of give you an overall view of what that's like, during the 2008 and 2009 crisis, that was 19% decline. So the first 4 months of the year, January, February, March, April, has been the worst performance for the NASDAQ on record. And you guys are going to see some things popping up here. I got all fancy this week. And for those of you guys that are listening on the podcast, some of you on the comments left me, if you guys want to find me on YouTube and see all the fancy graphs and everything, just look me up. Just look up Marcello Arrambide. Have some fun spelling that, and it should come up just fine. That includes $1 trillion in losses in crypto. Monday of this week was the 5th biggest sell day on record. Everything is awesome. Everything is great. And inflation for the week, they reported that the velocity of the increase of inflation has actually slowed down quite a bit at 8.3%. But one of the things that I wanted to show you was the increase in prices of everything else. Gasoline, and I'm going to read these off just because we have a lot of people that are listening on the podcast to kind of give you some level of percentages. So they say that the inflation rate is 8.3%, but gasoline is up over 43%. Used cars, 23%. Meat, fish, and eggs, 14%. New cars, 13%. Electricity, 11%. Food at home is up 10.8%. Transportation 8.5%, and food away from home is 7.2%. But don't worry, inflation is only 8.3%. You and I know, especially those of you guys that have been following me for a while, we're going to put on that conspiracy hat because the preppers were right. Remember, it's a lot higher than just 8.3%. U.S. stock market and the Canadian market all negative for the week. As I mentioned, the NASDAQ had its worst January to April performance absolutely ever. You guys have probably seen the percentages there on the right-hand side. Over 22% so far. Overseas market news, Euro markets are mixed. The DAX was the biggest winner in Europe, while Russia went down by almost 4%. Latin American markets, mostly mixed as well. Those didn't move as much as they did in the US and Europe. Africa and the Middle East were mixed as well. Saudi Arabia went down by 7% overall, the biggest loser of the week. And then in the far, far east, we have Indonesia going down by over 9.5%. While the Philippines went down almost 6%, so mostly lower in the far, far east. The big news for the week, the Luna crash and crypto and Bitcoin news. I know that most people still don't invest in crypto. And if you guys remember, I'm not a big crypto guy, and this is part of the reason why. It's not that you can't make money with crypto. There's just so much. It breaks my heart to see the amount of people that put their life savings in these things and then they lose absolutely everything. So keep that in mind when you're investing. It's not that you can't make money in crypto. It's just that there's a lot of scams. It's not even regulated. So when something happens like the exchanges where they stole money from Canada, for example, you just lose all of your money. And it's, I read a guy that owed the IRS $200,000 in taxes and now he can't pay it because he lost everything with the Luna crash. There's another guy who's kind of a big wig, I would say. He had $18 million and now the value of that is $22,000. So just be prudent. Don't just go and invest in these garbage coins just because they say they're going to go up by 1,000,000,000%. If you guys have followed me for a while, I've been big in trading in the financial markets. You're not going to lose all your money. Things like this aren't going to happen in stocks or futures, for example. This is why it's good to diversify, do some long-term stuff, do some short-term stuff, but just be careful out there. So Luna is what's called a stable coin. A stable coin is essentially a crypto coin that's connected to another fiat currency, for example, a dollar or euro, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So stable coins are like cryptos, but just connected to the dollars or the euros. This one in particular was connected to the US dollar. And part of the problem as well is the fact that we have the dollar exploding to a 20-year high. And that's part of the reason why everything is coming down, because now we have the Fed, the central bank of the United States, deciding to take out the money that they injected into the market. That's why the markets have gone up literally forever, it seems, right? If some of you guys are younger, for example, 20 years old, 25 years old, 30 years old, you guys haven't seen a down market before, because every time that it happens, the plunge protection team from the government comes in and props everything up. And because we've had the seriously low interest rates, which are the lowest interest rates in the history of the world, that forces people to look for higher returns and forces them into risky assets like companies that don't make any money, who always say they're going to make money in the future, for example. So the USD decoupled from the dollar this week, and it sent basically the value of Luna and Terra USD just going to the floor. And just to kind of, this is a very high level overview of what happened. If I missed something or you guys want to add something, just put it there in the comments. Okay, it'll help everybody out. But essentially, 75% of the people that had the UST, or the stable coin that is based on, connected to the US dollar, was in what's called an anchor savings account, where they paid 20%. This was a fixed savings account. So what happened is they changed the formula where they weren't paying the fixed 20% interest rate anymore, and they turned it into a variable rate. This most likely was due to the fact that the US dollar literally just exploded in value, and we're at a 20-year high. So they probably had to tinker some things to keep the value of the peg. So what people normally could do is they could switch between the Terra USD and the Luna, but they could only be switched for one to the other. If you burn Terra, you can get, so you could burn Terra USD. I'm going really fast here, so I'm sorry if you're not following. You could burn Luna to get Terra USD and vice versa. So what ended up happening, because of the change in the interest rate, and because 75% of the Terra USD, which is based on the Luna crypto, was in the savings account where they were paying 25%, people then started getting this money out and converting it into Luna. So what happens when everybody gets into one specific currency? The value goes down. It's like the United States dollar printing dollars. If the amount of the dollars in the market increases, the value of the dollar goes down. It's what's happened to countries like Venezuela. A big, very popular one is Zimbabwe. I still have one of those $1 trillion notes. So that's what happened. So then the percentage of the cost of being able to provide this coupling action, right, the anchor, went up by 40%. So the system where you were allowed to be able to convert these stable coins for one another broke. Value of the Luna collapsed, and now people have lost absolutely everything. Let me know if you guys followed that, or if you want me to do a specific video kind of going through it step by step. But essentially, there's a conversion between Luna and Terra USD, both stable coins, right? And you can't really use Luna for everything because it's not like Bitcoin where people accept it for payment, right? So people had all their money in one of these accounts. They changed the way that they were paying the interest. People didn't want to do it anymore. They got their money out. They tried to convert it to Luna, because remember that you can only convert Luna into Terra USD. And then the value of the Luna collapsed, especially when the actually coupling mechanism stopped working, because the increase in cost, which was 40%, the system just couldn't take it anymore, and it just broke. So please be careful. Like, everybody talks about how much money you can make in crypto, and you should have done this and you should have done that. Who's talking shit now? Excuse my French. Just in crypto.com as well was reversing profitable Luna trades from May 12th, claiming users were, quote, incorrectly quoted the price. So you see how these, it just really infuriates me to see literally the manipulation. And this is partly what happens when you invest in markets that literally have zero regulation. Crypto.com is one of these huge exchanges. They could just decide, imagine investing in Apple and it explodes to the upside for whatever reason, and you make like 10 billion%. And then afterwards, Fidelity or TD Ameritrade or Schwab or Bank of America, any of these big trading houses comes to you and says, hey, guess what? You know those millions of dollars that you just made for this trade on Apple? Well, we're going to have to reverse it because we just quoted you the wrong price. Sorry about that, bud. See how it works? Very, very careful in these markets. Not that you can't make money in crypto, right? You can still make money. It's very volatile. But I'm going to do a video on literally why I don't invest in Bitcoin, because the returns that you can get in a market like futures, which has a lot more leverage, is literally the same as crypto. So if you want to invest something, yeah, do a little percentage. Maybe you can get this, garbage coin that's going to explode like Doge or Shiba, for example. I got some Shiba, right? Just throw some money at it. Just leave it there. If you lose it, oh well. If it goes to a cent, yeah, you're going to become a bajillionaire. But just be careful, because the market isn't regulated, and these are the kinds of things that happen. And I'm sure that all of the people that made all this money in the past probably lost everything with this drop. Coinbase, which is the US largest crypto exchange in the world, earnings were extremely bad. They lost $430 million in the last quarter. They had a 19% monthly loss in users, and they're now warning that if they go bankrupt, they could wipe out user funds. So let me get this right. Just follow me here for a second. Let's put on the conspiracy theory hat. Conspiracy Marcello, that's what we're going to call him. The largest crypto exchange in the United States, regulated, approved, overseen by the regulators. If it goes bankrupt, there's a possibility that you could lose all your money. Doesn't that tell you everything? So please, please, please be careful. And one last thing before I get off my soapbox, 55% from its peak in November 2021, we're talking about Bitcoin. And according to a new study, according to Glassnode, 40% of all the holders are now underwater, including the country of El Salvador. Conveniently, the president, Bukele, I think his name is, I know I'm butchering his name, he no longer has the little laser eyes on his Twitter profile, and he no longer has Bitcoin on his Twitter profile. Not so fun anymore, huh, guys? Because it's like a cult, these guys. They attack you in the comments, and I've been saying this for years. Just be careful. You can make money, of course you can. You can make money with everything. But there's a higher risk that you're going to lose money with crypto and Bitcoin because there's not regulated. And this is the kind of weird stuff that happens in the market. So El Salvador bought 15.5 million worth more Bitcoin, 500 in total. And according to the study in Glassnode, an even higher percentage of 40% of Bitcoin holders are now negative if you include the purchases from the last 6 months. 15.5% of all Bitcoin wallets fell into an unrealized loss as of last month alone. So now everybody's not, all the crypto, come and get your course, you're going to make $1 billion tomorrow. Not so easy anymore, is it, guys? Just be careful out there. Bitcoin for the week went down 23.68%, down 37 and change for the year, over 41%. So remember, Bitcoin has had positive news, right? I'm done with the soapbox. We're going to remove the conspiracy theory hat for now. So one of the best times to buy Bitcoin is when it's had these crashes. And remember what Warren Buffett always says, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. And people are definitely fearful right now when it comes to crypto. Remember, only educational purposes. This is not trading, legal, or financial advice, only for educational purposes, just to cover my butt there. In commodities, back to the conspiracy theory hat. We're going to put it back on because the preppers were right. Baby formula shortage in the United States. One of the things that you may not know, three American companies control 90% of the market, and it's super restrictive. That doesn't allow foreign formulas to come into the US market. Remember all those tariffs, for example, that President Trump was placing on the market because he says, the government, that the other company wouldn't allow American companies to sell there. Well, look at that. America does the same exact thing in the opposite way. You see how that works? Only 43% of the usually available formula, baby formula, is available right now. And for those of you guys, just to help you out, if you Google this, Weston A. Price, home baby formula, you could actually make it at home. And in the conspiracy theory news, conveniently, the bastard that is Bill Gates makes an investment suddenly in synthetic baby formula, and all of a sudden we have a fourth shortage. 2019, the bastard that is Bill Gates invests in the vaccines, and all of a sudden we have a pandemic. Isn't that convenient? All right, let's move the conspiracy theory hat now. Food riots in Sri Lanka turned deadly as people beat up police officers in Sri Lanka, and also set politicians' homes on fire. They just approved the new ECG climate warming nonsense, and now they don't have enough crops to grow and they don't have enough food for everybody else, which is most likely what's going to happen in places like the US and Europe if they approve that as well. India, as of Saturday, just approved the ban on exports of wheat, world's second largest wheat exporter, as the exports from the Black Sea, because of the situation in Ukraine and Russia, they plunged as well. So now we have an even worse situation. Remember, I told you guys last week that there's a guy that I follow that says that the wheat is the leading indicator for what's going to happen for the rest of the food market. So going to hit a lot of people hard. If you haven't started buying some reserves, I recommend you do that now. And Texas power grid operator is urging consumers to conserve energy after they had record unseasonably hot weather of 112 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 44 degrees Celsius. For those of you that are outside of the US, remember we had last winter, I don't think it was this winter in 2021. Maybe it was. Remember that the Texas operator also had problems because of the record freezing. So it's not literally just global warming that they were telling us years ago. We're literally having extremes in weather. And if you guys remember the videos that I did for you in 2020, I mentioned to you the next 10 years we're going to have a lot of economic problems, a lot of social problems, and a lot of natural disasters as well. And you can see we're starting to, India's banning the wheat because of the heat. Texas is now having a problem because of the heat. And then we had a lot of rains. And remember last week I told you guys that people aren't planting their normal planting seasons because of the extreme weather in the north either, right? So we have really freakish things going on all over the world. And within about 3 years, 120 food plants have exploded in North America. Let's put the conspiracy theory hat back on. In the United States, there's been 101 plants that have mysteriously caught on fire, and 2 mysteriously had plane crash into them. Canada, 18 food processing plants, and Mexico, 1. And I hopefully they put the little chart here on the right-hand side where you guys see it. In 2019, there were 10 incidences. 2020, there were 26. 2021, there were 31. And in 2021, this year, 2022, we've had 61 accidents in 4 months. So each year, 10, 26, 33, 61 now in 4 months. They're definitely not planning a food shortage. They would never do that. Gas prices reached an all-time high to $4.40. I did a video about living in Colombia. The amount of money that I spend here to fill my tank with gas is literally less than half of what I would spend in the United States. So keep that in mind. There's another chart there. We went fancy this week, showing you guys the charts. U.S. crude and Brent, which is international, went up by just a smidgen. Obviously, we have the situation where Europe and the U.S. want to ban the gas and the resources from Russia. Ironically enough, though, as I mentioned to you guys before, Russia's oil revenue is up 50% in 2022. So the sanctions are literally doing nothing. So instead of literally paying Canada for their gas, for example, we're literally continuing to pay Russia so they can continue the war in Ukraine. Politics is a beautiful thing, isn't it? European gas prices went up 6.4% on Wednesday after Ukraine's state-owned grid operator suspended the gas flows through the pipe that goes through Ukraine. So let's follow. So now the U.S. and Europe is supporting the Ukraine by sending them military equipment and money and all kinds of things, right? And now Ukraine shuts off the gas pipeline to Europe. You cannot get more ironic than this. But again, as the conspiracy theories say, it's all planned. The preppers were right. Thursday, nat gas prices went up 14%. Ironically, the president of Switzerland is, quote, preparing for an escalation with nuclear bombs. So remember the food shortages that the governments of Austria reported, Netherlands as well. Now we have countries like Switzerland planning for a nuclear war just in case, but nothing's going to happen. Don't worry. Keep going to work. Keep spending all your money on stupid things like video games. Everything will be all right. Don't worry. Precious metals mostly lower for the week as well. US dollar hit 20-year highs, and this is what's literally causing the chaos everywhere in the markets. Gold went down 3.91% to 1813, while silver went down close to 6% at 2124. And then in financial and banking news, the US Labor Department reported on Wednesday, that the velocity of the increase in inflation went down just a little bit in April. It went up by 0.3% in April alone to 8.3% over the last 12 months. But remember, let's connect two dots here. Remember that the central bank of the United States increased interest rates by 0.5%. So just in the month of April alone, literally from March to April, the inflation rate went up by 0.3%. So literally the increase in the interest rates that the central bank is doing absolutely nothing, except literally cleaning out your retirement account. Wednesday's inflation data on Wednesday, the China producer index went up by 8% year over year. Their consumer inflation rate, their CPI, went up quite a bit as well. And then the Senate confirmed the Federal Reserve Chairman, basically the guy in charge of the Central Bank of the United States, for the second term, 80-19 on the vote. Political news, a new president in the Philippines. They voted for Ferdinand Marcos, which is the son of a dictator in the Philippines. Economic news, the U.S., this is really big. The U.S. consumer sentiment slumped to its lowest level in 11 years. And remember that the consumer spending in the United States is almost 70% of the economy. So if U.S. consumers don't have confidence, that means that the economy is going to go to the floor. Just keep that in mind. In corporate news, Boeing shares collapsed on Monday over 10%. Again, they keep having production issues, and also the FAA didn't approve their plan for the 787. Monday, as I mentioned to you, was the fifth largest drop on record. The big tech company slashed $1 trillion in value. Apple alone went down by $220 billion. Ford took a mega hit on the shares of Rivian. So now all these unicorns like Rivian and Uber and all these other ones, people are starting to notice maybe they're probably not a good investment because they're literally not making any money. So now people are switching to value instead of speculation. So Rivian, the electric truck maker, went down by over 20%, and Ford decided to sell about 8% of their shares in the company. They took a $5 billion loss due to the investment in Rivian. And Tesla once again suspended most of its production at its Shanghai factory, this time due to the fact that they're not able to get the components to build the vehicles. Their sales have slid 98%. And in other corporate news as well, Elon Musk is now saying that the Twitter deal is temporarily on hold, pending supporting documentation that shows that the spam accounts actually represent less than 5% as they stated they did. Twitter collapsed 25%. And on Wednesday, Saudi Aramco, which is the state-owned oil company in Saudi Arabia, became the most valuable firm in the world since Apple shares went down by 20%. And we're at the finish line now. Technology, really interesting. Scientists at the University of Florida have grown plants in the soil from the moon, which is actually the first time it's ever been done, and actually pretty impressive due to the fact that the soil on the moon is completely different than the soil on Earth. And in investment news, the sale of passenger cars in China has gone down by 35.7%, which is the biggest decline since the pandemic. And in international events, Finland and Sweden are both going to announce or planning on joining NATO, which is not good, because the reason why the Ukraine war started in the first place is because the United States wanted the Ukraine to join NATO, which is on the border of Russia, and Russia didn't allow that. We could have avoided this war. I just think it's horrible because the level of corruption in our government now, I think the reason why they're literally continuing the war is because they want to bleed Russia dry to try to win or knock them down. And literally there's people suffering because of that. Can you imagine how evil these people are? And in unusual facts this week, Andy Warhol's 1964 portrait of Marilyn Monroe, called Shot Sage Blue Marilyn, sold for a record $195 million. Is the most expensive piece of art ever sold. So put on our conspiracy theory hats, leave a like because it's free. The preppers were right. I hope you're preparing. Have a good one. See you next week.